What's up, you guys? Thank you for being here. This is my actual workout. This is not a tutorial nor an instructional video on what you should do. This is just what I do, and I'm just going to explain what I'm doing and why I do it. But I don't recommend anything that you see me doing here necessarily. This is just for your information. A lot of you have asked about whether I stretch, and some days my workout is actually stretching and mobility work, and it's been many days since I've actually stretched. I demonstrated on another video how tight my body actually is. So I'm going to be doing in the next few minutes the 3 stretches that are very productive for me and my lower body. I might do something for the upper body as well. But just to give you an idea of how tight I am, this is as far as I can kneel. Yeah, like any farther than this, it hurts, you know. And if I put my feet together and I just keep my chest over my hips and I go straight down, this is it. I used to be able to just drop down all the way. About 2 years ago, I could go into a full kneeling. I could also do a narrow stance squat without my heels coming off the ground, but things have changed a little bit. And just so you know, this is my just cold, no warm up. This is my shoulder. That's my internal rotation on my shoulder. Okay, so the first stretch, if I only have a little time to do one stretch, I do this one, the almighty lunge stretch. I just go to a knee and then I walk my whatever leg is in the back. I walk this back as far as I can. I've been doing the stretch for a while, so the pressure on my kneecap is not a problem. But for some of my clients, I do recommend that they put something soft under the knee that is in back, because if this knee is even a little bit uncomfortable, it's going to really impair my ability to stretch. Okay, so from this position, my goal is to just get my body as vertical as possible. Another way I like to think of that is getting my chest over my hips, and I also want to keep my hip bones the same distance to whatever's in front of me. Okay, so I want my hip bones to be equidistant to the wall. There's actually a gate right here in front of me. I want to avoid letting my hip peel out to the side. And then from here, I'm just going to try to settle in. I'm also trying to avoid letting my front knee slide out to the side. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but right now I'm just trying to keep everything on a very narrow track. From this position, so what I'm feeling here is in not so much my quad, but the front of more the hip flexor area. From this position, then I will see if I can, using my hamstring, just flex my knee a little bit, going nice and slow. I'm trying to get some reciprocal inhibition. So as I flex my hamstring, my brain has to simultaneously send a signal to the quadriceps to relax. Okay, and just a few of those. Now, this is the reason why I like this stretch and why I choose it first, especially if I'm short on time, is it has everything built into it. Because if I just do this, so from this position, my pelvis is slightly posterior tilted, like a bucket of water tilting or pouring water backwards. I'm going to now try to take that bucket, my hip, and position it in anterior. And as I do that, now I'm getting a really big stretch all the way up to where my hamstring attaches at the ischial tuberosity of my hip. And then from here, I'm trying to, if I were to place my finger in here, I'm trying to fold my body over my finger if it was there. I'm also trying to dorsiflex or pull my toes back towards myself here. All of those movements combined will take out all the slack in the back of my leg, and I'm going to get a really big but relatively safe hamstring stretch. Okay, and then once again I come here, stretch the hip flexor. Then if I put a little weight on my hands, I use my hamstring to get a little reciprocal inhibition of the quadricep in the left leg, and then I can scoot back to here. If I lower my, I'm trying to fold my abdomen here onto my thigh. So if I put my hand in here, I'm folding myself onto that hand. What I'm trying not to do is to come forward from this position by flexing my spine and bending it into a rainbow shape. Okay, I'm actually trying to stay in a slight extension, also dorsiflexing my toes here. Okay, then to get out of this position, I'm just going to slowly walk myself forward. I don't normally spend that much time on that stretch, but since you're kind enough to be here with me, I'm just explaining what's going on as I'm doing this whole thing. I use the edge of my mat to mark where my front leg or my left leg is going to go, and I just walk back. And I have to walk back on gorilla knuckles because my wrist extension is a little bit limited right now. I started my peptide therapy last night, so I'm going to go easy on my joints today. Not like the peptides are going to do anything for me in just one day, but I'm just giving my body kind of a break on all the lifting and the heavy work, and I'm just going to kind of stretch and let my nervous system and my muscles and my joints recover a little bit while the BPC 157 and the TB 500 sink in. All right. Anyway, let me continue here. So right now, once again, I'm backing up into my right leg, and then, I think I went a little bit far. So what I should be able to do is come up. I'm trying to stack my chest over my hips, get my body as vertical as possible if I can. I'm also making sure that my hip bones, my ASIS, are equidistant from the gate that's in front of me, and I'm trying not to let this front leg drift out to the side. I'm trying to keep it, if there's a little wall right here, I want to keep it right on that wall. Okay, then I come forward, place my weight on my hands, gonna realign my right hip bone, and then I'm gonna flex my hamstring. And as I'm doing so, that is reciprocally inhibiting, or as I'm contracting my hamstring, my quadricep is in a kind of a unique position of it's being put on a stretch right now, but it's also being forced to relax as I do this. And as I'm flexing my hamstring, bending my knee this way, I'm also trying to dorsiflex my foot. I feel like I get a stronger effect in both the hamstring and in the quadricep. Then from this position, I'm now going to dorsiflex my left ankle. I'm trying to straighten the back of my left knee towards the floor. That's giving me a really big stretch in the hamstring on the left side. And then from here, I'm now going to try to settle. Now this side feels tighter than my right side, so my ability to fold my abdomen onto my thigh here is not as easy as on the right, and that's okay. And that's the way it usually is for me. It's always been that way. So I'm not going to force my left side to be like my right side, because that would be a mistake. But what I can do to take up the remaining slack in the back of my left leg is to dorsiflex my left foot lightly, and you can see I can't move it as much as I can on the right side, and that's okay. And besides just pulling my foot back towards my belly, I'm actually focusing on dorsiflexing by pulling the smaller 3 toes back towards myself, because that gives me a very special effect in the back of my leg. Now I think I've had enough of that, so I'm going to come back forward. Let me walk that forward a little bit. I should be able to mount up on extended toes. Come back to this position. And then one more time, I'm just gonna, keeping my right ankle dorsiflexed, I'm gonna do a few curls just to get a nice stretch. And this is a nice neurological way of using one muscle, the hamstring, to not just stretch the antagonistic quadricep in the front, but right now these 2 muscles have to communicate with each other. So it's not just pulling on a muscle to stretch it, it's actually a neurological interface between the 2 of them that for me seems to produce a nice effect when we're actually doing things like sprinting and related. Okay, now I'm gonna just walk this, just gonna bring myself back up here, recover that, and then I'll come back to a high kneeling position. Okay. So from this position, I believe in yoga it's called a camel pose. I don't think I'm going to be able to get a camel pose right now, but my thighs, my knees, and the bunions of my big toes, I'm trying to keep them touching. And right now, all I'm trying to do is lengthen the front here. I'm not necessarily trying to bend backwards. If that happens, that'll be a byproduct of me lengthening. I'm trying to push my ASIS or my hip bones forward, and in doing so I'm getting a big stretch through a very large tight area right in the quads in this area. Okay, from this position here I'll bring my arms up, and this is where I can get a little shoulder mobility. I'm just gonna, as if I was doing an incline chest fly, I'm just opening the chest up, and I'm not just letting gravity pull my arms down to the side. I'm trying to actually retract my shoulder blades, once again using the principle of reciprocal inhibition, where as I contract the muscles between the shoulder blades, they're antagonistic or reciprocal. So that just means my shoulder blades do this, my chest and my shoulder muscles do this. So if I'm using the muscles between my shoulder blades, I'm actively squeezing them, my nervous system has to send a simultaneous message to the chest and anterior shoulders to elongate and relax. And as you can see though, that message is still, it's still in in progress because I'm restricted right here. And that's okay. I'm just gonna, if that's where I am right now, I'm not gonna force that. I should always be able to breathe somewhat freely. As every time I bring my arms up, I'm also trying to expand my rib cage and extend my spine. And just letting everything fall out to the side. Okay. Now, after stretching all of this and my hamstrings to a degree, I'm able to sit a little deeper into the kneeling position than when I started, right here. Now I try to stack my chest over my hips because to me that's the honest version of my kneeling position. I can stuff my hips lower if I actually counterbalance or place myself here, but I want all the weight of my chest over my hips, bearing straight down, and also trying to plantar flex, or my ankles, or pointing my feet downwards so I can stretch out all the tight musculature that's in my shins, anterior tibialis area. Okay, now the next, so after I've done the lunge stretching, my next favorite is going to be, okay, wrists are feeling better. I guess they call this a pigeon pose. We'll start on the right side. From a push-ups position, I just lower my knee to the floor, just wherever it goes, and then I will turn it inwards to wherever it comfortably ends up with my foot in a plantar flex position. Okay, so I'm trying to flatten the blade of my shin gently to the mat. From this position, actually I'm gonna cheat myself a little. I'm gonna come up here so I can slide back and stay on the mat just to stay in frame. Okay, so I've maintained the same angle in my shin. I can't really go farther right now, and that's okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start backing myself up. All right, and I'm not gonna worry about making this shin all pretty and nice transverse across my body right now, because what I'm just gonna do, I will change this angle by backing up on the mat, and I might have to move myself forward just to stay in frame. But what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to sit into my right glute, and as I'm doing that, this lever here is coming upwards and it's giving me, I believe my femur is internally rotating right now, and it is stretching the external rotators of my hip that reside or lie right underneath my glute muscles. The piriformis, gemellus, obturators, all those muscles. Okay, now what I'm actually going to do now, rather than trying to worrying about this leg getting here in the traditional pigeon, what I'm going to do is I'm moving my left knee and my whole body this way, and I'm going to now try to resettle. I'm going to slide back to take up the slack, and I'm bending off to my left, because as I do this, I'm actually stretching the right lower back area, the quadratus lumborum, the obliques a little bit. So I'm anchoring hard off this right arm, and I'm trying to lengthen, and as I do this, this actually pushes my right glute down more, and I get a nice stretch. So this stretch is going from my right glute area into my lower back, my right lower back area. All right, now if I've done that properly, I got to reposition myself so I stay on the mat. Okay, so I'm going to come here. Now after I've stretched my glute, I can position my hand or use my hand to reposition my shin a little bit. And now as I slide back, if I don't move my ankle here, I can actually walk myself back into a position where my shin is transverse to my midline. But if on a given day I can't do that, or I don't have the time to do that, I don't make that the goal. There's a B right here. Okay, so from this position, once again, I'm going to back my leg up as much as I can right to here. And then once I'm here, I'm now going to walk this entire leg. I'm actually trying to move my hips this way. Okay, now my left elbow, I'm going to place it in front of my right knee. And in doing so, I'm cranking down into the floor off of my left forearm in a way where I am rotating my entire rib cage to the right. And in doing so, I'm now putting more pressure down on the right glute, and that's giving me a nice big stretch in that entire area. If I'm able to do so, now I can start stretching my shoulders, the posterior deltoid of the left shoulder, and all of the musculature on the scapula and into the shoulder retractor area as I just start walking my arm down this way. And if I can, I place my right arm here to help brace this position. And I'm only concerned about rotating my rib cage now to just stretch out my shoulder. If I can get a little bit farther. As I'm doing this, as I'm rotating my rib cage this direction, I'm also trying to take this hip bone and dial it down into the floor. Okay, I'm also trying to make sure I'm actually trying to get the top of my thigh to do this into the mat. So I'm just trying to take out all the slack in this position that I can. Okay. Now to get out of this, I'm not going to reverse because this takes a long time for me to get here, and I found the easiest way for me to bail is just to roll out right here. I know that's not very yoga-like, but it's efficient. Okay. All right. Let's do the other side. Once again, I start from a push-ups position. I stack my shoulders over my wrists. I'm going to lower my left knee. Now this time, just to save a little time and not have to reposition, I'm going to walk that knee up farther than I should. I turn to whatever level my body allows me to, and I place my right knee on the ground. And as I'm backing it up, I'm not just backing it up, I'm backing it towards the left. I'm trying to align. It might not actually happen, but I'm trying to get my right knee to align with my left knee. Okay, so right here, I'm starting to feel, it's a little tight. So I'm just going to place my hand out here, and I'm just going to turn. I'm pushing hard into this arm, and I'm torquing myself, not twerking, torquing, just turning my rib cage. As I do that, that pushes down. It pushes down into the lever of my shin or my lower leg. It acts kind of like a pry bar to kind of get, and I'm trying to get my left glute down into the floor. All right, as I'm doing this, That was it's pretty tight on this side, so I'm gonna actually back out of the stretch a little bit. Also give this arm a rest. All right, and I'm gonna go back. While on the break here, I'm just gonna move everything up so I can have some space to back up. All right, so I made a little space in my glute. I stretched out my, let me come over to this side so I have a little space here. Okay, so I'm now gonna back up. I can now move my shin. I can walk it to here. I'm gonna back up my right leg, back it up. I'm also trying to move it this way. Okay, I'm a little tighter on this side, so I'm just going to see if I'll place my right arm here, trying to get my right elbow aligned with my left knee, and just doing that, how do I describe this? The tightness in my lats, so it's driving this arm into the ground, which pulls my rib cage into a rotation towards the left. And as I both push down with this arm and this arm, trying to turn my body, I'm getting a big stretch in this area here, okay? So now, as that goes better, I'll turn my palm upward so my upper arm is externally rotated in the socket. And I'm trying to get a secondary stretch into the posterior or rear delt of my right arm. Also going into some of the external rotator muscles on the back of my shoulder blade and the retractors in between my shoulder blades. Still trying to turn my rib cage, pushing off this left arm and this right arm, trying to turn my body and then sink my glute down. A little harder for me to flatten out here. Okay, now left side is quite a bit tighter than the right. So the way I get out is just like this. It's sloppy and it's ugly, but it works. I'm gonna do the left side again, but these stretches, for me, they can be as strenuous as any weightlifting or other exercise I would do. All right. This one I'm going to go through a little quicker. Push-ups positioned, shoulders positioned over the wrists. I'm going to bring this leg up. I'm going to move it till my shin is transverse to the midline. I'm going to walk my left hand outside my left thigh. Start backing up the right knee. But as I back it up, I'm also backing it this way. Also making sure my right hip bone stays dialed into the ground. It doesn't run away out to the side. And then to ensure that that right hip bone stays down into the floor, and then I'm actually getting the stretch in the muscles I want to stretch, I'm going to place my right elbow in front of my left knee, and I'm pressuring down with my right elbow and my left hand to turn my rib cage this way to the left as I settle down into my left glute. Very tight here. I also want to keep my palm up so that my shoulder remains in external rotation. All right, and then to get out of there, I'm just going to relax. All right, so that's the second stretch. The final stretch. I do other stretches, but these are my top three, and I mostly do these. I come back to high kneeling position. Thighs touching, knees touching, bunions of my feet touching. From this position, I want to get double X posture, extended spine, expanded rib cage. From this position, I bring my arms up. My shoulders are very tight. Take a deep breath. And I'm using my shoulder blades. I'm squeezing my shoulder blades together as I'm trying to lengthen the front of my body. This is as far as I can go. My shoulders cannot go any farther right now today, and that's fine. Bring it back up one more time. All right. Now I'm going to test my kneeling position. Trying to stack my chest over my hips. And after I've taken the tension out of all of these areas, I'm able to sit a little deeper into a kneeling position than at the start, because a lot of my lack of mobility comes from just an intrinsic load of tension that resides in the muscles and puts a lot of tension on my joints when the muscles are at rest. So if I can unload that tension out of the muscles, then as I add tension to them by placing body weight on them, they don't pull as acutely on their corresponding joint and tendinous attachments, and I'm able to sit a little deeper. This, a few minutes ago, would have been very painful for me. And then if I can, I'm just gonna see if I can push my hips forward, very tight here. Ideally, I'd like to be able to push my hips so far forward that my femurs would be vertical, but you can see right now, they're pretty limited. My shoulders, my right shoulder's kind of not happy here. Let my head come back. Even I can feel tightness in the front of my neck. Okay, from here I'm going to try and come up. For me, that is as difficult as any squat or deadlift I would do. Okay. Just gonna sit. Once again, let's see if I can stack my chest over my pelvis. This normally is a pretty painful position for me, but if I stretch everything out, it's tolerable. Pry the thighs open. Now I'm just gonna see if I can actively dorsiflexing my ankles. Coming out of this slow. Okay. And the last thing I do is I just place my legs out in front of me. I try to sit up tall. I'm actually trying to get a slight anterior tilt in my pelvis. So when I sit up tall, I have a slight extension in my back. From this position, if I were to place my fingers here, I want to fold over my fingers without rounding my back. I'm also trying to dorsiflex my ankles by pulling the small 3 toes back towards myself. I don't like to just randomly dorsiflex through the big toes because that ends up with this inverted kind of dorsiflexion. I find that if I focus on a more everted ankle dorsiflexion, I'm able to address tight muscles in the soleus and calf area that hide with a more randomized dorsiflexion. So from this position, once again, double X position, extended spine, expanded rib cage, moving forward here. And finish with a butterfly. Shucks, I wish I demonstrated how bad when I first started. I don't know how long I've been doing this now. If you're still here, thank you so much. But this, when I'm cold, is usually literally about like that. That's nothing goes. So this is always, and this just feels nice to do. I don't use my elbows to pry my legs down. I use, once again, the muscles outside in my hip. I try to muscularly open this position and just training the neurological interplay between the muscles on the outside of my hip and the muscles on the inside of my hip that would resist my knees from going all the way down. I'm also pulling up here with an emphasis of trying to just invert my ankles a little bit. Okay. I guess this is called corpse pose sometimes. I guess with the arms at the side. I'm just going to lie down. And this is right now, this is my shoulder flexibility and the inflection on my back. I'm also trying to position my lower back on the ground in such a way that my rib cage can't compensate by tilting this way and giving me a false sense of what my shoulders actually can do. So I'm using my core gently to keep my lower back in light contact with the floor, not allowing my rib cage to tilt upwards. And that allows me to really find where in this range of motion I'm tight, and my body doesn't like that any more than I do. So if it understands the truth, which is right here, it'll also work to help fix this. At least I hope it will. All right. It's dinner time. Once again, if you are still here, thank you so much. I hope some of this was helpful. If you decide to do any of these things yourself, please use discretion and be careful. All right. Aloha.